Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session discussing the potential commercialization of the incredible assets that WorkshopBank have put together. Delighted to have Nick Martin with us from WorkshopBank, and his specific question today is about whether we have any ideas about commercializing the asset base. The pre-work, of course, was to look at some of those assets and have a few ideas in advance of how that might be shaped. So the process today will be to brainstorm the following question, which is, what are the potential commercial opportunities for WorkshopBank? And what we'll do once we have those list of ideas is place them into themes which we can discuss, and finally then take those into a rating activity where we will prioritize them against two criteria. The first being the scope of the commercial potential for that idea or group of ideas, and the second is how easy or hard that might be to implement, and I'll talk you through that process as well. I can see from my screen that the participants have effectively signed in, and you're now live in the session, and you're held at the welcome screen, and you're also using the MeetingSphere add-on to my host, which is the Join Me dial-in. So of course we can use any commercially available conference call system in addition to MeetingSphere for these live synchronous meetings. So thank you very much for joining us, and what I'm going to do is start the activity now, but just perhaps invite Nick Martin from WorkshopBank to say a couple of words, introduce himself, and give us the sort of the scope of the conversation that he'd like us to have today around brainstorming the commercial realities.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Steve. And hi everyone. Thanks for getting involved in this session. I'm really excited to see what we all come up with. Just kind of a brief history of WorkshopBank. It's about 3-4 years old now, and I started it as a way to share the tools I had with the rest of the internet. In the hope that people would respond and share their tools with me, that I could then put those online, and that is indeed what has happened and what is happening. It's an exciting organic project. I don't really know where it's going or what it's going to do. But the response I'm getting is fantastic from the community, and it's growing all the time. But it is getting to the point now where it is costing a fair bit of money, and there's been no attempt so far to monetize it. Mainly because I'm a little bit worried about doing that kind of thing because of the free nature of it. But reality is that if I don't finance it some way, then it's going to be harder and harder to finance it as it gets bigger, or the bills are getting higher. So I'm really interested to see what you guys come up with,
Great. And just briefly, Nick, you've got over 4,200 subscribers at the moment. Right. Any particular trends or groups within that we might focus on as being the potential market for these? A paid-for version of these assets.
Yeah, I mean they're all facilitators. Most if not all are facilitators, and they're either independent consultants, or they're working in larger organisations, and they run meetings inside those large organisations. So there are two main demographics. But it's completely worldwide. I mean, it's almost every country in the world is represented.
Fantastic. Great. So with that in mind, and those very kind of altruistic aims of WorkshopBank, and the history as to how you've collated these, and the nature of the IP, the proposition really is ease of access, the simplicity of the way that the documentation is laid out and the accessibility. And so that's basically the baseline for the following discussion, which we can go into now. So I'm just going to ask everybody to join the brainstorm. So the question is, effectively, what are the commercial opportunities for WorkshopBank? So anything goes at this stage, and I think what we do is have a good 5-10 minute brainstorm and see what comes out. We'll discuss as we theme those, and then we'll make a very pragmatic view about where we think the value is from this process, and then offer that to Nick for his consideration after this session.
Sounds
so I'm
great.
putting you into the brainstorm now. There is the chat window going in MeetingSphere as well at the bottom left, the little icon that's jumping about. So please, you're welcome to kind of chat in that, which is sort of stuff that is not obviously content, but advice to facilitator, or I can't hear, or I've dropped out, or whatever are adequate chat processes, and I will monitor that as we go through. Okay, so there we go. Let's have a brainstorm. So what are the commercial or the potential commercial opportunities for WorkshopBank? And let's get going and see how this content builds. Great.
Okay, so Steve, I believe I'm looking at the participant view. So all of these lines coming in now, these are coming in from anyone and everyone, but we can't see who it is that's putting it in. Is that deliberate?
Yeah, correct. So the baseline default position in MeetingSphere is the potential from anonymity to really free up people to have their brainstorming thinking without wrapping it in any question of what else other people might think they need to say or would like to say. So it's a free, open, transparent brainstorm.
Yeah, okay.
And it's very simple, as you've seen. You're entering the ideas in the box at the bottom, and you're perhaps even pausing to read some of the other content, which may then trigger other thoughts.
Yeah.
There's no evaluation going on now, which of course tends to happen when you're using flip charts or just talking. So we're just purely getting all the ideas out on the table. And you can see already there are 20 odd items in just a couple of minutes. And, a very simple interface. You can edit your own content. And you can also, if you see the little comment bubbles on the left-hand side with a 0/0 next to it, if you had any comments on any of the ideas that are already in there, then you click on that box and you can write a comment against that. And indeed, people may even have a dialogue under each idea as to the quality of the idea or the practicality of the idea or whatever. Certain levels of next phase evaluation going on potentially at the same time as the brainstorm. But facilitatively, giving people just that open space and time to collect their thoughts and capture it. And then we as a group can then look at converging these into key topics, subjects, and so on.
Okay. So as the problem owner, as it were, should I be keeping an eye on these comments that are going in under the ideas to see if there are any addressed to me? Okay. Oops. Yeah,
and I think so ultimately you own it in terms of content. So if there's any sort of as we come into that convergent process and look at the themes, If there are any that you really feel are unpalatable or not worth investigating any further, then, obviously then's the time to say, well, actually that's not practical, or we can't do that for legal reasons or whatever. The sponsor is a very distinct role in a meeting sphere session, and is quite separate from the facilitator often. And I make a big distinction between the process facilitator, in this case me, having taken a brief from you and invited the participants to partake in this session, and you as sponsor, who ultimately will own. So I need to check with you periodically that the content is relevant, that it's valuable and useful, and that it's meaningful to you in terms of the question we were asking.
Okay.
All right. So I'm just going to give you another minute or so now to capture your thinking. If you've run out of ideas, then please have a look at the other ideas, and I can see some comments going in. Nick, if you look at, for example, number 29 and number 25.
Yeah, I've just answered number 29 actually.
Yeah, so there are some questions in there. Don't need to answer those now, but if you did want to answer a specific question like, would you consider working with Meeting Sphere, then select it, and in the comment box below where you add new content, that'll appear as a sub-comment to that comment, and therefore there's a sort of a string of dialogue, if you like.
Yeah, okay. Wow, so 49 ideas.
Yeah, 49 ideas. I wasn't actually watching the clock, but that's about 4 or 5 minutes, isn't it? So, and just look at the the range of ideas. There's no tracking. What tends to happen in a conventional brainstorm is that the first person to speak, often then the second, third, fourth person to speak builds on that idea or rubbishes that idea, and you tend to get locked into that sort of that being the topic. Whereas actually in the room there were many other starting places in response to that brainstorm question, which potentially can be lost.
And just get
this way, we've got all the content there, and we're now going to go into the more sort of collaborative process of working out what we've got here by theming it. So just everybody, if you kind of dried up of ideas, I'm not going to turn the input box off during the convergent theming process. So you're welcome as you think of them to add new ideas, but let's just have a little look at what we're doing. I'm also monitoring the chat and seeing that there are sort of conversations going on between the participants, and this kind of back channel, if you like, is a very useful way of managing distributed groups and distributed individuals on the call, without the need for any of the participants to kind of interrupt the facilitator for a question on process or whatever.
Okay. And that's what Paul meant in the session chat about it's an important back channel. It's the session chat that's an important back channel.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Okay. And that session chat can be just used as a live interactive channel during the session. And you have the option of saving that as part of the report as well. Okay. If there's any meaningful content in there that of course is reflected or not reflected in the content.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So thank you, gentlemen. Great effort. See lots and lots of different ideas. When we're introducing Meeting Sphere to a new group, one of the questions I would ask after this kind of brainstorm would be just basically, what was that like? And I find this is a much more effective way of getting people to reveal almost to themselves what some of the dynamic of the session was. And during our dialogue, Nick, of course, we've noticed the anonymity, the simultaneity, which allows us to build a much larger number of ideas than certainly a conventional process in a very short period of time. And I think more importantly, that we're capturing the many different perspectives that are out there from the positions of people who are joining this call. So, we are sure, or pretty sure, that we've covered most of the types of ideas that could come from that question, from where people sit in their own organizations or from their own perspective around their knowledge of what WorkshopBank is currently producing. So I'm just going to switch on to the category. So I'd like people to just have a little look at the content and the 50 ideas we've got now. I'd like suggestions verbally about what those categories might be. How would we theme this? How would we group this data? If you're welcome, if you're still on mute, then please add the suggested themes into the session chat, and I'll add those, and you're welcome to verbalize them as well.
Templates seem to be a common theme.
Please say again, Peter.
Templates seem to be a common theme.
Okay, and are you talking specifically meeting sphere templates?
Yes, that was mentioned several times.
Okay, so I think, you know, templates in terms of the PDFs that already exist on WorkshopBank's site, you know, go so far. Very formulaic in the way they're produced. So if I add templates meeting sphere, thank you.
So I would say, Steve, I would say training initiatives. That's another trend.
Great, thank you, Jorn. I'm adding strategic partnerships, which I've seen a little bit of. So training.
Coaching, I've made a couple of speech. Add in certification with training as one file.
Okay, so I'm going to put brackets certification.
They're in the chat box.
Great.
Premium content.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Sell tools.
Say more about that, Wolfram.
It's about selling products directly from the site, not just referring.
Okay, so direct sales from site.
Consult in the community.
Okay, so consult. Okay, I've got advertising in there, direct sales. There's certainly some mailing list opportunities. Okay. And templates, actually, what I'm going to do, because of the clarification from the chat, is I'm going to put electronic templates and then not be presumptuous about meeting sphere. But of course, it's the perfect tool. Okay, any other, just have a quick browse through those 51 ideas now and just see if there are any others that we can add as themes. We don't need to be 100% at this stage because we can always add further themes as we go through the sorting process. But just a heads up now as if there's anything that we're obviously missing. Great, okay, so why don't we just now populate these themes on the right-hand side. You do this by clicking and dragging each of the items on the left-hand side, the ideas into the most relevant theme on the right-hand side. You're doing this on behalf of the group. So if you're unsure as to the most appropriate category, leave it and somebody else will pick it up, or we'll pick it up as a group at the end because it doesn't fit, and perhaps create a new theme. And don't all start at the top because we'll all be trying to grab the same idea.
What happens if two people grab the same idea?
Well, the first one who gets it will be able to drag it. The second one might look as if they're grabbing it, but they won't. So it won't drop in, and it will then appear in the theme that the first person has picked it up on. And of course, Nick, you can also click through the themes. And if perhaps you've dropped the idea into the wrong theme, then you can move it again. So you can click open any of these themes by just clicking once on the folder.
Okay.
So you can check and validate that your stuff's gone into the right place.
Yeah. It's a lot easier than moving post-it notes around on a wall, isn't it?
Indeed, indeed.
A new file folder, events and conferences, please, Steve.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. And my normal advice, if we add a theme during this sorting process, then I would just remind people if they picked up anything and slotted it somewhere else. Now we have that clarity around events and conferences. Could they please go back into the theme and click and drag the idea back into events and conferences? So again, we're kind of tweaking the process as we go through it and making sure that our list of options, themes, is relevant. Okay, so I'll just give you a few more seconds to complete that process.
We need something along the lines of data bank or database, please.
Yeah, what sort of things are going to go in there, Neil?
Well, I'm looking at number 17 there, electronic data bank of questions and question types. And I see there's another one up there. Number 12 is similar, so people have had the same idea here. So I think that's quite useful. Okay,
so the theme is, say again, data?
The database or a data bank, something like that.
Yeah, we can discuss it. I don't quite understand. I think the WorkshopBank, of course, is a database of assets. But
well, looking at some of the comments here, it looks like maybe we've got things in case studies which should go into that too. Things that templates alive.
Okay, so different to the assets that already exist on WorkshopBank, some additional FAQs or use cases, feedback.
Like question 16, idea 16 on the top of the thing, that is statistical research on best practice and popular ideas. It's the beyond just simply having the templates bank.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So these final few, are these going to go in? Yes, they're going. Package the site so it can be ported to internet servers in organizations. So that's an offline idea. That's also a repeat.
It's sort of a referral type idea, isn't it?
Yeah. Should we put that in referrals and loyalties? Yeah. Right, it's gone. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just quickly go through the folders in turns, and we're looking for ideas that have made it to the wrong activity. The wrong theme. We're looking for perhaps questions of clarity over what does that mean if there's a sort of an ambiguity about the comment that might mean it should really sit in one of the other themes, and any comments without getting stuck in a deep discussion about a specific thing at this stage. But we just want to make sure that we've effectively done the job right in sorting this data into these themes. So I'm going to now focus you as participants to where I want you to look. So I've gone into electronic templates. You're still free to add new ideas if you want, if you're stimulated from that. I'm going to just check that the comment underneath convert all paper-based templates to electronic versions has a nice comment. Add a button to the site to let people choose by each templater, paper version or electronic version. That's something very simple to do. Thank you for that.
Steve, just as about the tool. So have you everything inside that blue rectangle? Have you just taken control of that on our screens, but then everything else on the screen is we can still play around with?
Yes, I've got actually two options. So I can synchronize participant displays, i.e., which I'm doing now. I can take away your ability to add anything, and effectively I screen share my screen with you. Yeah. So I want to now run to premium content. You can see my mouse moving, and you have no ability to add content or move freely through those folders. Yeah. However, if I use the focus participants, I simply jump them to where I'm looking. Yeah. That will be to premium content, and you're still free and able to contribute. So it's just a way, it's two different levels of driving the participants through the process. That's okay, so let's have a look at strategic partnerships. The ideas here should synchronize with you. So it's about exclusive sponsorship, it's about strategic alliances, It's about tapping into those other institutions and bodies of knowledge around risk management, Six Sigma, Kaizen, and so on, which make a lot of sense because, of course, they're producing very specific assets, some of which are reflected in WorkshopBank's content at the moment. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Great. Good. And ideas still going in, Nick. So we're still, stimulating new ideas and developments of those ideas as we go through. Great. So let's have a look at the training initiatives, certification, and certainly one of the overlaps really with strategic partnerships is that people could accredit practitioners as they do as Six Sigma practitioners, for example. There's an awful lot of content that perhaps might be worthy of accreditation through a training program run through WorkshopBank or again with a strategic partner. So that's quite an interesting proposition. Just tell me if there's any content in there that is perhaps in the wrong place or is too ambiguous or whatever.
There was one, and I saw somebody moved it. Somebody had moved it, so you would, as you were talking, had moved it into another file folder.
Okay. So yes, let us know when you're doing that, so we can discuss that, because somebody might think that the content should be here. Can somebody explain what MOOCs are?
If you go into it,
click on the.
There you go.
Hi, Steve. This is my comment. It's a massive open online courses.
Aha, great.
That most universities are now doing to attract students, and obviously some of these MOOCs are really useful and could be generating income.
Excellent. And they're virtual, Jorn, or are they hybrid? So they're face-to-face and virtual?
No, they're totally virtual. They are based on the video explanation from the teacher. Then we could also use MeetingSphere for exercises within the MOOCs program. But this could be charged as participants extract lots of value from this.
And you should mention, Paul, that we already started to develop a MOOC for ourselves. Yeah? You remember that, Paul?
Is that, thank you, Jorn, is that?
We have been thinking to develop a strategic partnership with Diplomero, Iversity, or edX, or Google.
Exactly. We are in the process of doing that, yeah.
Great. Okay, so premium content is the next folder. So that's the idea about subscribing specifically for premium content, which is accessible perhaps through downloading the free stuff that's there already. Again, that fits quite nicely with the training, accreditation, certification, and working with partners who could perhaps deliver some of those accreditation courses. And the idea 51 split to premium and basic. Okay, so there might be a paid for part of the site, Nick, that you could experiment with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 27, is that in the right place? I would question that. Number 27.
Yeah, write blogs about certain well thought of sorts of templates. So where would you see that going? Electronic templates? Or is that about sort of advertising and kind of social networking around the WorkshopBank content?
Yeah, I would say it's either advertising and blogging, or blogging gets a separate folder, even though it's only one. I would imagine the blogging will become pretty key. And going back, somebody who'd written about writing books, commenting on books and having them come out, that maybe could all join in that idea.
It might have its own category.
Yeah,
I agree.
I've added it to advertising and social networking at the moment because there's only one there. So let's pick that up, and I'm going to put that into that new content. Okay, it's not a very big category, but it might be that we split it out at a further stage. Great. Let's have a look at referrals and loyalties. And actually, we touched on this earlier, Nick, but there's a question there at the bottom, 69. Speaking of royalties, is all the information currently on WorkshopBank in the public domain and therefore free of royalty payments?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So it's all freely available, and therefore the WorkshopBank proposition is the the level of access and the depth and breadth of the content that you've got, and also the simplicity of the layout and how easy it is to get to those PDFs.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Great. Okay, everybody happy with that theme? Okay, I'm going to rush us through these next ones because, of course, you see the process. So we're back into advertising and social networking. So, advertising worth considering on the site and so on. Lots of internet-based companies can help with that. Google, of course. I think they're all in the right place. Please shout if you spot any ambiguity. Direct sales from site. So tools. Ads for social media, sell tools related to the topic from the site and so on. So maybe there's some additional assets or materials that could be, again, not premium, but add-on sales that people might like. And we've also got 35 down there, facilitator services, consultants, and so on. Technographer, by the way, is a curious term that has been knocking around now for 20 odd years, and it's specifically the role of the person driving the software, which in this instance is me. I'm also facilitating, again, from a process perspective, often in a larger group or a complex process, those roles would be split. So you get your technographer focusing entirely on what's happening with the technology, and the facilitators then freed up to manage the process and, of course, the psychological state of the sponsor. And particularly in large events, that's a crucial distinction, because you do need somebody to focus entirely on the technology in the room. Sometimes 18, 20, 100 laptops.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so you mean in a conference situation, you've used meetings for in conferences?
Yes, many times, and just that basic proposition of how do you stimulate interest from the audience? How do you actually find out what's going on in their minds? How do you allow them quickly and simply to contribute? So we might, for example, at the very simplest level, have participants accessed through MeetingSphere to a presenter. So on the screen, the presenter's going through the PowerPoint slides. And you've got comments and questions going into the presenter live. So typically, say 250, 300 people in the room, there might be 30 or 35 tables of 8, 9, 10 people per table, and there might be 3 or 4 devices, laptops, Chromebooks, whatever, on the table that gives effectively access to everybody in the room. Yeah. To be able to capture their thoughts as they think about it. Yeah. And of course, that's anonymous. And what I might be doing as facilitator in that situation is rapidly theming those questions and topics as they come in, so that I can then quickly brief the presenter, and we can pick up on some of the crucial questions that kind of need to be answered live. And of course, there are many other ways of using it in that conference situation: table group working, digging deeper into topics, simultaneous working around different ideas or context or concepts, implementation plans for new strategy, getting people actually thinking about how they might deliver what is being proposed by the senior team, and engaging staff in change programs, all sorts of different things. And they've been used, MeetingSphere has been used many, many times in that environment, almost exclusively with significantly positive reviews. In fact, it's more than often the one thing that people say has been the best about the conference, the level of interactivity through the tools available to them on their tables. Yeah,
which is unusual, isn't it? Because technology is normally the one thing that people really complain about in big groups. But
yeah, exactly. But then, they're also used to perhaps working in table groups and having a flip chart, and then having to do that dreadful walk up to the top of the room and hold their flip chart up and tell them the 3 bullet points they've come up with after a 20-minute conversation. Yeah. With MeetingSphere, you capture the depth of that discussion and the perspectives and the ideas and the use cases, which make it a really much more pragmatic and meaningful conversation. Okay, so back on track, consulting the community. Of course, being a specialist in engagement, that's a great topic to have there. And I don't know how often you communicate with your 4,000 plus people, Nick, but there will be some great ideas out there about how people might see or be willing to pay for what level of content. And that's a great idea. Of course, we need to survey them. Good. Mailing list opportunities, one in there. Ask all subscribers if they need help with other templates other than the one they've already have. So again, that's kind of follow-up sales or follow-up opportunities with existing customers. Events and conferences. So we could run some webinars, a face-to-face conference, really build a community around the WorkshopBank assets. And then finally, we added database and data bank. So there is the opportunity there to think about the data as an asset in its entirety and what we might do there. So thank you, gentlemen.
There's a very interesting new idea just coming that's not categorized.
Yeah, so I'm just going back to that. So we've had the 75th idea, which is establish meeting sphere meeting rooms on WorkshopBank that can be rented along with a facilitator and technographer with a minimum lead time day before. Very interesting idea about how an individual might be, say, looking at an asset in WorkshopBank and thinking, yeah, this looks perfect, but I don't feel comfortable or confident in running it. I need to run a session tomorrow. Click a button and you're immediately introduced to a person who may be qualified and able to run that for you with a very short setup time, because of course it's all in a structured template. Great idea. Where should we put that, gentlemen?
Probably in the referrals one, by the way. There should be referrals and royalties, not loyalties, even though of course it will be loyal too.
Indeed. Thank you. And that's as easy as it is to fix there. Good. Great.
I just added another comment. I just added another idea under database databank benchmarking. So you have a databank of benchmarks for processes.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Okay, so just short reflection on. Sorry, go on.
Steve, just typing categories. There's a typo on electronic templates.
Thank you. Always enjoy being picked up by a English not as the first language. Thank you very much, Paul.
I love that expression. English is not the first language.
I know you speak many languages, Paul, and equally good in all of them. So just a short reflection then before we leave that process where we brainstormed ideas based on that simple question about what are the potential commercial opportunities. We've discussed it. We've developed the themes. We've converged those ideas into those themes, and we've validated and checked those themes. Any comments or further ideas that we might want to pick up on before we move into the next section, which is to prioritize these?
I'd just like to throw in a quick reflection. I mean, when all the 76 ideas were uncategorized, it was actually quite difficult to get my head around the breadth of categories. But now they've been categorized, it is incredible how many different angles people have come in at, and I can't imagine there's another idea out there. It's a fantastic, in such a short amount of time to get 76 high quality ideas out. It's going to keep you busy for a long time. Thanks, gents.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also the thing that we're doing is actually engaging this group in this process, and we're taking along, engaging means that they're now interested in the outcome. So actually, we're now going to ask people to prioritize these from their own perspective in what they think you, as the sponsor of this session, might do. But ultimately, that's just a guide for you, and of course, you have to manage the consequences and the opportunities of that process. So great, thank you. So what I'm going to do now is just pull us into the second activity we're using today, which is a rating activity in MeetingSphere, one of the 5 activities that MeetingSphere software is based around, and this is our rating activity. And just for convenience today, I'm showing you a multi-criteria vote, and you can see the themes listed there 1 to 11. You can also see the button on the left-hand side, top one training initiative says 7/7, which if you click is the content that was in that theme during the brainstorm, to remind you how we came up with that theme and how that's defined. And you're welcome to browse through that. And then I'd like you to rate these themes or ideas of commercializing WorkshopBank's assets by 2 criteria. The first one is your considered opinion on the potential, so the potential value from that idea, and then also the feasibility. So the feasibility is effectively the the ease or the difficulty with which that could be implemented. And please note, on the potential scale, 1 to 5, 5 is of huge potential, and 1 is 1 is lowest potential, so the least commercial viability. And then on the feasibility scale, if you click that column, you'll see that the scale appears. 5 is extremely feasible, very feasible, sorry, and that means it's extremely easy to implement. And 1 is impractical, so really doesn't have any legs. So let's have a go. Fill out the buttons to select your vote, and when you've finished, please select the green tick at the bottom, and we can then have a look at the results. Okay, and as we're finishing that off on my screen, what I get to see is the participant progress. So I'm looking at 2 people still to submit. And once you've submitted and agreed that it's anonymous and therefore you can't go back and change anything, of course, if it is a named activity or a team tagged activity, which are 2 levels of feature functionality in MeetingSphere, then you can go back in and allow participants to change their votes as well. And of course, you can copy this rating activity and have people vote again, perhaps after a discussion that clarifies some of the answers that we've got. Great, so I can see everybody's now completed the rating. And I'm going to show you the results now, which is just one of the most delightful opportunities as a facilitator, because conventionally measuring consensus in a group is extremely difficult. You can do show of hands, you can have people comment, but if there are some real objectors in the room or people with information that they're not willing to disclose, then it's really difficult to actually measure that level of consensus. And of course, consensus and seeing that everybody is in alignment with your views on these priorities is a hugely important element in driving that engagement and that commitment to the outcomes by the participants. So just quickly, what do you notice about these? The triangle, by the way, is showing that the standard deviation is greater than we'd expect. And you see that top line, so they're now ranked by mean score. And we have direct sales from the site. One person's given that a 1, which is of low potential. 7 people gave that a high or huge potential. So that would, to me, reflect that this is obviously really important because it's been ranked highly. But there may be some information that we could flash out around why somebody might think that's a very low potential. Does anybody want to comment on that and how that rating has come out, either on direct sales or any of the others? Quite a spread of results, and there's not much consensus. Any views or ideas about perhaps let's focus on direct sales? Why might you think that direct sales is actually quite a low potential? Is it the degree of revenue or the amount of revenue?
Steve, could you open the discussion so I can revise the comments, please?
Sorry, Paul, say again.
Could you open the discussion activity so I can revise the comments, because I don't recall what was.
Yes, okay. Okay, so what Paul's asked for is for a reminder of the original brainstorm. So what you'll see now on your screen is the original brainstorm starting again, and you'll get that superimposed. So you can now use the radio button to select WorkshopBank Brainstorm and join, and we can flick between the two activities. Once you're in the other activity, if you want to go back and refer to that, then you can come back to this prioritized based on potential by clicking either the blue back arrow in the top left-hand corner or the 2 left and right blue arrows in the middle of your toolbar. We've tried to keep the participant view very, very simple so that there's no ambiguity or people can't sort of make a mistake and click the wrong button. So we're keeping them very focused on the content. Does that help, Paul?
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
Great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull us into the. I'm going to stop the other activities, Paul, forgive me, but we can all start that again. Putting you into this is the mean scores and standard deviations of both potential and feasibility. I'm skipping the feasibility scale because of the time, but I'm now looking at the total scores. And on your view, they're currently ranked by potential mean scores. But if you look at the total score, which is a new column that we've added for the purpose of this exercise, if you click on that, then you can rank them by the sum of the potential feasibility scores. Yeah. Okay, so we can see that electronic templates comes out with 8.6 as direct sales does, but we know that there's some ambiguity around the consensus in direct sales. And we've also color coded them. So we know that those top 5 electronic templates down to advertising and social networking are the most, the ideas with the most potential.
Yeah, I love the colors.
Yeah, and of course you can change the colors and change the criteria by which the colors work and so on.
Yeah, okay.
Nick, just a quick reflection on that as a sort of a prioritized outcome for this exercise: electronic templates, direct sales, referrals and royalties, strategic partnerships, and advertising and social networking being the top 5.
I think that feels about right, because when you go down into the yellows, whilst certainly for training initiatives, I think the potential is there, but it's difficult. So, and the score is reflected in that, and premium content is easier, but the potential is probably not as great as somewhere else. So it looks the way that the table has come out, it feels about right.
Great.
The standard deviation is really interesting, isn't it? That measure.
Yes. And I think you can get used to, as a facilitator, you can get used to the range, the standard deviation range, so you can quickly spot where that ambiguity is, or where that standard deviation isn't showing good quality consensus.
Yeah.
And that again is a pure facilitator's aid. Because it means you don't focus on where there is consensus, which is actually the compelling opportunity you get when you're working with a group conventionally. You kind of go where it's easier, but actually this shows you that you must have a conversation about some of the most ambiguous or perhaps the most controversial issues, and try and flush out the reasons why people might think differently on that, which of course is a incredibly useful, because it may reveal data, perspective, markets, insights that previously haven't been captured.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've started the graph version of this as well. So if you click on potential with the little graph sign next to it and join, you'll see a four-box graph, and the options, the ideas, are neatly arranged against sort of high potential, high feasibility. So just a different graphic representation of the table. But again, very, very useful to see where the overall scope of these ideas fit along those two scales. You can see that most of them are above 3 on the 5-point scale, so they're all positive. And if you hover over any of those points, in fact, I can synchronize screens, so I can direct a conversation around the two that are perhaps of most interest, which are now 1 and 2, and you get the ability to arrange that. So if I can just select these two here, then they're selected on your screen as well, so we can see those and talk about them.
Yeah.
So it's a way of virtually kind of directing people to discussion on the particular areas. Okay. So just any more content comments, or any anomalies you want to talk about, or anything that you can see would cause further problems or issues, or any insight that you might have having gone through that situation in terms of the content that we can deliver to Nick?
Nothing at the moment.
Great.
Nick, just a quick question, Steve, if I may.
Yeah.
I'm wondering why 11, which is mailing lists opportunity, is ranked so unfeasible when it should be not complicated to implement.
Yeah, it's a good question. So yeah, so what might be the reasons why people have rated that so low, particularly on the potential?
And
although feasibility, 3.5, so it's quite high.
I think if I remember rightly, in there was just one idea of reaching out to the list and asking them. So, that, I guess that activity is not going to make much money in itself, but and it's relatively easy to do. So the potential is low, but I guess the long term that comes off that, the potential could be high. So yeah. But that's I can't quite remember what exactly it said in there.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on that, people?
Well, that's the type of interpretation and then questioning the results, which one typically does after the session, or follows up by a discussion, isn't it?
Yeah. That's very true. Okay, well, let's just draw this to a close. And I think very grateful for everybody's input today. What I've done just in the background here is, of course, produce a report of the session. So now if I close you back down to the welcome screen, I just want to invite you to click the icon, the yellow information icon that was the original welcome to the session line, and you can see I've just added under materials for the session a document which is effectively the complete output from today's session. So if you click and open that in Word, you will see a complete record of the brainstorm, the theming, and of course the graphics and the charts and the results. So again, that's a really useful instant asset to have, which records distinctly what this process went through. What I would add to that is just a narrative from a facilitator's point of view about the process, just so it's clear to anybody who wasn't in this session what actually occurred, and the narrative would just explain the process steps and so on. I would also perhaps even reorder the report so that the first 2 pages are the actual prioritized list of potential ideas, commercial bank's assets. Great. Any comments, questions? Brilliant. Well, thank you very, very much for your input, gentlemen, and grateful for this. We will follow up with Nick and certainly let you know what happens with the ideas we've generated today. And please, any evaluation or feedback comments you've got for me or the use of the tools, always happy to have those. Not too many though. And with that, Nick, any final words? And then we'll close the session.
I'd just like to say thank you very much for everyone being involved. Amazing ideas, and I'm really looking forward to having a crack at some of these to see where this goes. So, whatever does happen, it most likely started here first. So thank you all for taking part.